Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of The Human Role. So, I'm really excited to have my really good friend and colleague back, Mariah Hantis. She is now the head of people operations and total rewards at Turing. We're definitely going to let her get into what she's been up to since we saw her last year. But this topic, we're going to talk about AI and payroll. No, that's very sensitive for some people, but definitely AI can be a strategic partner, not a replacement. So, wanting to just make that clear to everyone, Mariah is going to give us all of her great and amazing insight. But Mariah, before we do that, please catch us up on what you've been doing since we last saw you. Lots of fun things going on, right?
Yes. I'm so glad to be back. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to catch up today. I took 4 weeks off. I left Deal in April and I just did whatever made me happy. I did drop offs, I did pickups, I did school parties for my kids. I pitched a kickball game for my son, got my lesson learned by a bunch of 5 and 6 year olds that maybe that's not what I should do for a living. I traveled, I picked soccer and running back up, just like really found myself again as like an individual and hopped back into HR with no other than the best Turing as their head of HR ops and total rewards, really leaning in to this role in this space as I continue to ramp up.
Lovely. Look, all the important things that are so necessary for us to do, right? Seems like you had some great time unwinding, and the kiddos always, every parent I talk to, even me, when I'm with my nieces, it's like they are, one age, but they act like they're like 10 to 15 years older,
Oh
sorry.
yeah.
But okay, well, let's get into the good stuff here, talking about AI. Obviously, AI is now really getting into every industry, but it's heavily being integrated into, the HCM space, right? And so how do you see it really specifically supporting, we're using we're supporting payroll operations in our environment today, right? Want to just make sure people aren't scared of it or running from it, but it would be great to hear, your insight here.
The biggest thing that I love, I love this topic because as a payroll person at heart, it's the foundation of my career in HR. It is just such a manual job and has always been a manual job. And it might always have to be a manual job when you think about like, what if one day all of the computers crash, right? You can't just not pay people. So it becomes scary when we leverage too much of technology to the point where 20 years ago, you could say, well, I'll just calculate payroll on pen and paper. I don't know how many people can do that as a skill anymore. So I think there's some of that will always need to be there. But I always say with AI and anything tech forward, right? It's not about what it can do because we know that it's powerful. We know it can do great things, amazing things, powerful things, but it's just how you use it. And especially in the role of a payroll manager, they're doing so much manual work and they're tasked with so much. I'm testifying this as personally, right? Like running payroll, checking the compliance, checking to make sure everything is accurate on time. And that is a lot. And usually payroll, just like anything in like HR, G&A orgs in general, they're running lean teams. So you may only have one payroll person tasked with this, despite the growth of a company, maybe two people, but they don't necessarily aren't 100% backups of each other. There's a lot of room for error in payroll and such a very important function of the business. So I think AI and what I see it helping payroll professionals is being able to be assistive in that way, helping vet some of the compliance that, is ever changing. Especially as companies grow and they expand their borders within the states, let alone outside of the US and globally, checking and vetting all of the compliance, checking all of the payroll rules, putting data and like aggregating data in a certain way, as long as you're doing that carefully and compliantly, we're talking about PII and a lot of sensitive things, it can be so assistive in their process.
the constant fear of AI actually, taking someone's job, replacing them. I think at this point, we do have to accept that there's potentially going to be some jobs, right, that will essentially be taken over. That's a bit inevitable. But I think from a payroll perspective, especially under the HR umbrella, there's still that human aspect of everything. So what Mariah was just mentioning, it is enhancing, right, your ability and knowledge to be able to do your job more strategically every single day. It's almost nearly impossible to remember every single state local requirements and laws. Things change several times throughout the year as well, so that also can be problematic for people. Like Mariah mentioned, we all have our normal day to day, so when that stuff starts happening and taking a toll, your day can be completely pivoted to something totally different, right, than what you thought it was going to be. And so I would say just look at, AI now is almost being like another member of the org chart. I know some companies may not be there, but what Mariah was giving you all was great insight on how AI is going to help enhance your job. The tedious day-to-day stuff, the researching stuff that you just don't have time to get to, go ahead and drop it into AI, let AI figure it out. HCM platforms are already configuring that in the systems now to better assist you longer term. So I think that's really good key factors right there, Mariah, where it's just kind of like there are things that we need help with. And if it's there and if it's in our face and not going anywhere, why not just use it, right? Instead of running
Yeah,
from it.
absolutely. The information and the power that these, models have now are so important to just also the growth of a professional, a payroll professional, but all professionals, right? Because there is so much to learn. The world is so much smaller and bigger at the same time. You're no longer working for companies that are just, 20 people in like one town. Some people are, but when you start talking about this remote tech space, they're expanding. They're not working, operating in one state. They're multi-state. And if not, they're multi-state, they're multi-country. And they're going to task one or two individuals with managing the functions of the business for payroll and for HR matters, in the beginning stages of as they're growing to handle all of these things. And no one goes to school for this. We all know, we say it time and time again. And no one went at 18 to college saying, I'm going to do payroll and memorize and know everything about payroll. You fall into it. You become good at it, and you should leverage the tools and resources that are available to you, because at the end of the day, there is so much more to payroll than just processing payroll. It is the biggest line item on budgets. So you want to be able to be a partner to the business, to be able to translate those numbers and explain, what risks are associated with various actions that are taken from the side of HR, where it's terminations, right? And like what that means if we don't process payroll on time, or why we need to know by a certain date. There is a lot of other tasks that payroll teams can work on with that free time that AI will allow them to just do that manual work, and they can partner strategically with the business in so many other areas.
Absolutely. Great insight there. And also, when you mentioned that payroll is like top on the budget, right? I saw a clip the other day where an owner was telling her employees, having her employees guess how much taxes she pays for them, just like the employer taxes. It was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they were like so shocked. So
Yeah,
people don't realize that on top of like what you're paying and what you're paying into tax, well, what the company is paying you and what you're also paying in taxes, employers have their own taxes they also have to pay, and don't
absolutely.
let that get messed up, because then penalty and interest, that's a whole nother
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
So yeah, so we want to make sure, that we're doing things accurately. That way you don't have to go back and course correct things. One thing is messed up on a paycheck, that leads into quarter over quarter, that leads into amendments, exceptions, and then messed up W-2s. It's just a whole thing. So yeah, so if AI can be your partner and not your replacement, definitely kudos there. So now I want to get into security, because as we're talking, kind of leading into this, of course, I think at this point I was against AI, but now I'm for it. And I think it's good for companies to use. But wanted to kind of just pick your brain on what's important for organizations to really kind of have in their viewpoint when they're integrating AI, into their platforms. Like, what should they really watch out for? Because we know there's always some sensitivity there. So what's your insight when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think whether or not companies are saying that they're going to leverage AI or not, and it's part of their process or not, they should absolutely have a policy on it because the reality is AI is accessible. I can just go on ChatGPT right now, find anything I want, right? And you want to be able to have a process and a policy for the individuals working for your company around what, how, if you can leverage this tool to what capacity. So what information, do you have an enterprise account or do you not? If you don't, and if you're using a personal account, can you do that? If you can, right, what information is acceptable to put in? Like, can you ask it a question? Sure, but don't start dropping PII from your employees' information into that model to spit out, answers and charts and things like that, because that's a security issue, that's a data security issue, and you want the company to be able to protect that. So whether or not they've made a statement on how the company as a whole is using AI, we have to assume that individuals themselves are going to utilize AI, whether they like it or not. So they should have policies around this. That's going to be the first step. That'll also, depending on the business that you're in, it'll also give reassurance to your clients and customers, depending on your service, that this is how we use AI. Your data is safe in these ways, and this is how we protect it.
Yeah, that full transparency I think is really good, especially for the employee population. There's some employers that are even nervous to tell their employees that they're utilizing, AI. Then employees get upset because they feel like you're hiding something from them, and the whole like trust factor, when it comes to HR and your employee population gets into a way. So I just think the more transparent that the company can be, like
Yeah.
you mentioned, getting out SOPs, how they're going to use it and how it should be used, so someone isn't abusing it, is also really important. So let's get into the big T word, trust, that I use. Because as payroll practitioners, I mean, and I've been guilty of it too, right? It's like you have your process, you have your flow, things work, you've come into a company, you have cleaned up the company to the best of your ability, things are going just fine. And then boom, now you got to like involve another system, change your process. And lots of people are territorial, when it comes to their area. And so curious how you would handle getting a payroll practitioner to trust this automation feel and the naysayers of it. Any insight for anyone who's struggling
Yeah.
with that now or scared? Head of people operations, please help us out.
Yes, I'm an advocate, AI or not, I am an advocate of growth, right? And that's how I position AI. And we touched upon it earlier a little bit. Like, it is an opportunity for growth. It's a learning opportunity. You're going to be challenged in this environment, in this global environment, in this very nuanced, complicated, laws changing every day around payroll and hours, and if overtime is going to be taxed or not taxed. Like, there is things that are changing daily that we just can't keep up with anymore. And use AI as a partner, as we were talking about, so that you can grow, right? You can learn. Like, this is something that we all know, like, our managers can't hold hands. Like, that's, companies aren't equipping and building teams out with like all this surplus to be like, this is going to be your mentor and you're going to learn from this person for the next year before you're on your own. It's kind of like you fly in, you land, and you got to figure it out. And to be successful, you have to leverage these tools, because this is the way of the future. So, you don't have to depend on them. They shouldn't replace everyone, but they should be used in an assistive way as a partner so that you can learn, you can grow. And as I mentioned before, all of those things that you're learning and you're taking in from these tools, you can then use your own knowledge to then partner with the business in strategic ways of like, hey, I ran a query in ChatGPT on compliance across all 50 states. Who had to digest that? ChatGPT isn't talking to the CFO or the head of HR and saying this is what the outcomes are going to be and the consequences. No, that's going to be a person that is digesting the information, that's simplifying it, putting it in a presentable way for them to digest how these impacts are going to influence the direction and the costs associated and the liabilities to the business. And that it in itself, just that piece alone takes so much time and effort and strategy to be able to execute. And right now we have a lot of payroll professionals focused on that first part, building out what it means to be compliant, how we can be compliant. Well, let's cut that part out or reduce a lot of the hours spent in that area to then focus on how all of those impacts relate to specifically the business and the goals of the business and the strategy and the direction that the business is going in. Because, we have, for example, like, do you want to hire in California or not, right? Do you have to hire in California or not? Write an assessment, right? If you are, we have payroll. I feel like payroll and finance, like, we're very much have strong opinions on where people should work and why, for reasons that are very selfish, like the tax filings or the reports associated with it. And if you want to make that case, right, get all of the research, digest that research, check that research. AI isn't always correct, right? Just like humans, it does a good job, but it's not perfect. Present that in a way of like, hey, our business costs, we've, increased hiring X number of percent in this specific state. This is costing the business X number. Like, you can do so much with the information that you have. It's not just about being the person to acquire that information. It's being the person to actually translate and describe what that means to the business. And I think that's where the value is in people. AI can spit out that first part. It's not there yet in that second part of really tailoring the needs to the business and making decisions that impact the future growth and strategy of payroll, hiring, and all of that.
Absolutely. So that always just takes me back to what I always say. There still needs to be a human, right? There still has to
Yep.
be a human. And it's hard to get people to understand that, as helpful as it is. Number one, Mariah was right. It does have errors, right? So you do have to check certain things. And when you catch the errors, you can kind of talk to it and be like, oh, what about this? Oh, did you miss this word? And it's like, oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. And it'll like redo it again. So it's just kind of like a electronic brain, I guess, trying to sort itself out, similarly to how we would probably have to do a problem over and over and over again. So use it as a tool, right? Use it as a tool, and let's not get too hung up on that. But I did like how you went into, like, it'll help us present certain things. It'll help us grow within our organizations, which also leads me to one of the last questions I wanted to ask you. Like, what are your thoughts around AI having, like, turning into payroll practitioners being like a people analytics type of translator thing? It's like you have to build, if you're assisting your company with their AI chatbots, right? You have to build that into the system. And I'm curious. Obviously, you guys, we don't know. This is just us assuming something I heard, so I'm just trying to like see if there is maybe an avenue for it. But like, Mariah, like, what your thought process would be if we did turn into, people analytics and translating things, into AI so that it does spit out the appropriate things for our business. That doesn't mean for the
Yeah.
masses, but just for our company, our specifics for our company, so that your employees can go into the chat bot, ask specific questions. It'll answer them so they're not bothering, the team. I think there might be an avenue for that, but I know that's still kind of like in the air.
Yeah, I mean, the chatbots that they're building to answer questions around payroll are simply amazing. From someone also, you and me both, right, who spent hours answering questions as simple as when's the next payday, right? And it's like those are things that can just be automatically trained. Where do I find my pay slip? What day is payday? When's the next holiday? Do we get paid for holidays? You can build out knowledge bases within your companies, and they can pull information from there to help facilitate some of these questions. But again, like when we're operating with lean teams and you have one or two payroll people max working through all of the tasks associated with payroll, which is from input to processing to paying to then also the reporting and the vendors and all of the other ancillary things that you're still working on by the time the next cycle starts, there's just like no time anymore to answer the volume of the questions that come in. Or if there is time, you're taking away from being able to have these opportunities as a partner to the business. Payroll professionals know so much. I have just utmost respect for them because of just the environment that they're put in, of just like, oh, the expectation is that they pay people on time and it's accurate 100% of the time. How it's done, rarely everyone knows how it's done, how much work and effort goes into it, but it gets done. And if all of these tasks, like the manual tasks, these questions that are just can be answered through self-service, through a bot, whichever that may be, these payroll professionals can start to enter the business, have seats at the table where decisions are being made of it's no longer just process payroll, get it out the door, get it accurate, get it on time. It's how should we process payroll? Where should we process payroll? How many times has payroll professional not been included in like the decision of what payroll tool they're actually going to use? For the company, right? Like there's just like, and I won't say this everywhere, but so I don't want to make it sound bad, but a lot of times it's just they're just processing the payroll and getting that job done. And then all of the other decisions are being made. But they are also the people who know so much about the system, what actually the needs are, because they are the users. They are the people who, if a system can't effectively do time tracking, they're the people then collecting the spreadsheets, keying in Excel and doing that. And that is now taking hours of their time, which is like, great. Can we use AI to aggregate timesheets? Sure. But also, you could have found a more effective system to do that. You need those payroll professionals at these tables helping make these decisions. And I think the more that they can become these translators of data and analytics, it empowers that group of people to say, hey, I'm sitting here and processing payroll. Yes, absolutely. But I know what I'm talking about, and I know what all of this means, and I know how this could impact the business. And I don't think there's enough opportunities yet where payroll professionals have that largely throughout the companies now.
Yes, I mean, almost in every company, right? Like my mind's going crazy because I feel like we could talk. There's so many different things you said. Like we need like 3 more episodes
I'm here for
between
it.
HR and the accounting and the CFOs and HR directors, between like payroll not being at the table and how important it is to have them at the table. It's like it literally is just, I always say, hopefully no one gets offended by this, but like to me, sometimes payroll is looked at as like the redheaded stepchild, where it's like, it's just like, come on, you guys, like we're literally paying everyone. I get that we're not necessarily bringing in, the bacon per se, like a sales team or something like that, but like, or marketing or ads, but like we are literally making sure people are happy. We're literally, I try to explain to people the W-2 you get at the end of the year where you just go and file and everything's nice and fluff. Like there's a process to make sure throughout the year that those numbers are accurate and that
Absolutely.
not one cent is off. Like you do not want to have problems with your W-2. It's terrible. So yeah, we got to come back for more episodes after that because there's just so many different layers to our role. And there's lots of talk around getting payroll at the table. Should there be a CPO, like a chief payroll
Yeah.
operator, at the table? And it's like, I think so, but lots of people don't think so. But what if you have a CHRO that doesn't know a lot about payroll and it's like not
Yeah.
their fault, right? But it's like you need the right people in the room. So
Yeah.
all very important factors there.
Absolutely.
All righty, Mariah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Go follow Mariah, see her new journey at Turing. Definitely try to continue to use AI and don't feel threatened by it. Become more strategic. Look at it as like a partner that is your friend. You can even talk to it as a friend. You could even
Oh,
ask
yeah.
it, how can I become a millionaire? And it'll give you a bunch of stuff. Like, come on, you guys, like, let's use our tools.
Yeah.
Lots of fun things you can do with it outside of just being worried, if it's going to take your job. Or if it is, let it tell you how you can, make some money elsewhere. So yeah, so lots of good things. But thanks so much for joining us again. I'm Mariah. Always great
Thank
having
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, and then guys, I'll see you in another couple of weeks on another great episode. Thank you. Bye.